Hello, everyone. I'm Becca, dietitian by trade, mom 24/7, wife from the start, and when there's a few extra hours in the day, you might find me hitting the trails or on horseback.
And I'm Kara, a therapist to women, a mom to a boy, an entrepreneur, mountain junkie, and a postpartum runner.
And this is Fit for a Queen, a podcast that's devoted to the female athlete wanting to balance the teeter-totter of all the things we desire out of life as women: performance, health, intellect, and taking time for self, even if we only get 1 minute out of the day.
We're so excited to be bringing you the queens in the athletic world who have done just that. Okay, ladies, take a seat at your thrones, grab your crowns, and welcome to Fit for a Queen.
Welcome back, Queens. We have Heidi Strickler today. She is a registered sports dietitian, certified specialist in sports dietetics, and metabolic efficiency training specialist with a master's in sports nutrition from Liverpool John Moores University in England. Although she's based in Seattle, Washington, she works virtually with athletes worldwide. Heidi specializes in endurance athletes, female athletes, plant-based athletes, REDs, and amenorrhea.
Heidi believes that all foods fit and loves education, empowering her clients to eat in a way that supports their physiology, training, and lifestyle, brings them joy, and makes them feel confident and powerful, ultimately optimizes not only performance, but overall health and well-being. Heidi brings her personal experience into her practice, including years spent as a high-level endurance athlete, as well as her own struggle with an eating disorder and amenorrhea in an athletic world where disordered eating behaviors and body types are normalized. Heidi continues to compete at high level in trail racing and ultra distance events. She also loves snowshoe racing, cross-country skiing, road and mountain biking, and doing anything and everything in the mountains. She does not go a day without a strong cup of coffee, and her favorite foods are peanut butter, dark chocolate, spicy Mexican food, donuts, sushi, and smoothie bowls.
It's getting around lunchtime. That makes me hungry.
You have listed a number of my favorite things. Heidi, let's get started. What made you get into endurance sports in the first place?
Well, I grew up as an athlete. I started playing soccer when I was 3 years old, and I played a variety of other sports, but soccer was really my true passion through college. So I went to college on a soccer scholarship and really actually had never done running at all, but I was always that teammate that loved fitness training, and when we would have to do, conditioning in soccer, and I was always really fit. I always kind of had an engine and started running kind of just a couple miles here and there. I think my senior year in high school when we were in the off season for soccer. And then when I went to college, on our off day, I started running with some of the girls on the team, and progressively kind of the miles got a bit longer and longer. And then I had a bit of a falling out with the soccer coach and after my junior fall season, and left the team and decided to go out for track and cross country. So I emailed the track and cross country coach, asked if I could walk on the team or kind of try out and walk on. And it was kind of love at first sight from there, and absolutely fell in love with track and then cross country, and started getting into a lot more trail running with the cross country exposure. And then after I left college, just did my first ultra within a couple months, and then kind of dabbled from one endurance activity to another, and anything that puts me out there for a lot of hours, especially in the mountains, is definitely something that I like to pursue. I like to see what my body can do.
It's funny how many people end up in sports they love just by happenstance, like accident. We were interviewing somebody today that wanted to continue to be competitive and ended up trying out for a football team and made it, but yet she'd never played before. So I think it's just a great reminder of stay curious, try different things, let your kids do all sorts of different activities. You just never know what's going to stick.
Yeah, our adaptability over many sport.
Yeah.
Heidi, what have you been doing with like COVID going on? And have you been able to, obviously we still have the outdoors, but how has that impacted a little bit of your kind of performance and getting out there?
Yeah, actually, right around, so I had COVID. I right at the beginning of the lockdown, I had a stress fracture as well as COVID, and so between the two, I wasn't doing much. I had a big racing season planned, and then things locked down here in Seattle pretty early on, and so I just kind of transitioned all my ultra miles from trails to roads,
Mhm.
which isn't great for the body when you're not used to running on roads. And then, but yeah, I ended up with COVID in April and stress fracture in April, and
Goodness.
it took us a while to diagnose. And I also am one of those people who is still, I'm what they call a long hauler, so I still
Yeah.
have a long, yeah. So this year has definitely been a year where I've really kind of really like kind of taken a dive into my athlete identity and just
Mhm.
given my body a lot of grace. And I mean, I haven't moved this little since I was 3 years old. I can
Mhm.
probably guarantee you. And so it's just been a lot of yeah, like rebuilding, reframing. I mean, it's been hard. I'm not gonna say it.
Oh,
It's
I bet.
still like I'm still, I broke my toe in December, so it's just kind of been one of those things, one thing after another
Yikes,
after another.
yeah.
But it's also been so, yeah, just so, I think, healing and just good to really kind of rebalance my identity and my priorities. And last year I was kind of to a point where I was just really, all my eggs were in kind of my running basket. I was really driven. I really wanted to have a really good racing season, and I kind of neglected a lot of other things in my life, relationships and things like that. And so it's been, yeah, it's been, even though it's been hard, it's also been really, yeah, I think healing. And I know I'm going to come back, a stronger runner off the back end. But it's definitely been a different kind of year than I had envisioned. If you would have asked me what my year looked like this time last year, I would never in a million years have kind of told you what actually happened.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Well, I know a lot of athletes again are, kind of in the same boat this year, and I hope you continue to kind of recover from all the things.
Thanks.
Uh, I always tell my daughter, like, nobody remembers the easy wins.
Yeah.
It's always
Yep.
the comebacks,
Mhm.
So
the
true.
overtimes.
Well, let's talk about kind of that identity too of were you a runner first and then a dietitian or vice versa?
They kind of happened simultaneously in a way. So I went to Seattle Pacific University, and I went there, like I said, on a soccer scholarship, planning on being a physical therapist ultimately.
Mhm.
And Seattle Pacific doesn't have a PT degree, but they do have a human biology degree. And so that was kind of my planned course of action. And through my freshman year, I kind of started thinking, well, do I want to explore a different career path? I've been an athlete my whole life, and I've also been a science nerd my whole life. So, I knew that I wanted to work in some type of job that allowed me to study the human body, work with the human body, and work with athletes. And so I talked to my advisor and started kind of exploring other options, and she brought up the idea of nutrition. And, growing up, I didn't learn about nutrition. We didn't talk about nutrition. Like, food was just not a topic. Like, I was a great eater. I love food, but like, the idea of nutrition, and especially sports nutrition, was just not talked about until I started playing soccer in college. And I had my first conversation with, a trainer who gave us a preseason talk on nutrition around, training and that kind of thing. And that was kind of my first introduction to this idea that nutrition could impact performance. And so my advisor brought up this idea of nutrition, and I thought, I'll explore it. And my first class was food science, and I completely fell in love. I was totally sold, and ended up double majoring in dietetics as well as nutrition and sports and exercise, and then minoring in exercise science. Then, like I said, it was a couple years later where I ultimately shifted into running, but they did kind of happen simultaneously. I joke that I went to college playing soccer and planning on studying physical therapy, and I graduated studying nutrition and running track cross country.
Mhm.
Another example of how so often we think we have a plan, but really just like you just kind of, it's like you're on a trail run or a river, and you just kind of go wherever the path or the water decides to take you.
Right. So, while research has kind of been on a halt during COVID, it's been interesting, though, things that have come to the surface, and we're finally starting to get some attention and focus on science within the female athlete population. So, as a female athlete, what has you the most excited right now?
I mean, I think it's just the energy and the conversation that's happening. I think about, I specialize in the female athlete, and I give, whether it's podcast interviews or presentations or just working one on one with female athletes, and just the empowerment that I think women who have periods or individuals who have periods, like the empowerment that they're beginning to feel, because we can understand why we feel the way we do, throughout the month. And just this recognition of so many of the recommendations that are out there, whether it's specific diets or nutrition protocols in and around training, that they're male driven models. And we can now just have this bit of understanding and sense of community around, hey, like this makes sense. Like I now have answers, and there's also something I can do about it. And I think, one of the things I joke about is, feeling like you're not, owned by your hormonal fluctuations in your uterus, and just the ability to understand what's going on in your body, and, like I said, do something about it, is so 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 empowering. Having answers is pretty incredible. And so I just think, just the exponential increase that we've seen in attention around what it means to be a woman in sport, and what that means for training and nutrition implications, and just how we've seen attention, increase with it. And, conversations on a national and international level with really high level athletes talking about playing, the Women's World Cup team, for example, how much publicity they, really garnered in terms of their conversation around what they did with the menstrual cycle and the period. And you see, high level runners and triathletes and cyclists coming out about their history with amenorrhea and REDS. And so I think just the fact that the conversation is happening is really really cool, and it's just exciting to think about where it's going to go over the next couple of years. And I think one of my favorite things is, seeing that the eyes light up when I'm talking to someone, or that expression of, oh my, it makes sense. Like, just, it's, yeah, it's so cool to be able to give somebody that semblance of, I understand, I get it.
Love it. So tell me, where do you think that we still have more room for growth when it comes to not only just the science, but translating it into practice? I think it's one thing when we can talk about certain concepts, it's another to actually be able to make change.
Yeah. I think it's that second point that's so important, where we can talk about it, but how can we make change? And I do think a lot of it is just going to be continuing to do research studies on women. So many of the recommendations that we do make as sports dietitians are really, they come from a lot of male based models, because so many years those were the study subjects. And so, I think it is going to take some time to do a lot of these studies on women to determine kind of a female specific model for sports nutrition recommendations, whether it's before, during, after, carbohydrate intake. You look at mouth rinsing, so many of these things, supplement use. There's so many topics that, like I said, that we recommend to kind of everyone across the board, but the research has been done on men and as well, is there a difference for women? And so I think that's, it's going to take time, but because the attention is there, I think it is going to continue to grow. And I think one of the other areas that really I feel is very much lacking right now is just our knowledge of oral contraceptive pills, and particularly like the combined oral contraceptive pill. And it's so popular, it's so pervasive, but and we're just starting to get a bit of understanding about truly what it does or doesn't do in someone's body compared to what we thought it might do or didn't do. And, I get questions all the time, when I'm giving presentations or working with athletes on, well, what if I have an IUD, or what if I'm on the pill? How does that change things? And I think that is one of the things that really is still a big question mark. Like I said, we're getting some information, but there's, yeah, I think that's kind of one of the areas that really is going to kind of explode over the next couple of years, when as we start to learn more and more and more about what the impact of hormonal contraception is on hormones and overall physiology, and how we can really, again, like, optimize an athlete's performance as well as overall health, and just really have a good understanding of what's going on in their body, and pairing that up with this idea of hormonal contraception. So I think that's probably one of the biggest areas that I feel like a lot of attention needs to go there, and we just don't have a ton of answers right now.
Hmm.
I hope too that the more that we talk about this and put it in, scientific terms, the more it neutralizes what's going on with the body, especially
Absolutely.
through puberty, postpartum moms, things like that.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times when it's not talked about, then people think it's just them.
Yep.
Would be helpful.
Again, like think about that. Anything related to reproductive health has been really, in a way, left out of the research due to
Yeah.
sometimes the quote unquote difficulty of using pregnancy with
Right.
research. But yeah, I'm really fascinated by like reproductive health in sport. I'm really excited to see people paying attention to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think one thing that I bring up a lot that I think is really is really ironic is that, our this topic of periods and, yeah, reproductive health, and, it's been so taboo. It's been pushed under the rug. Like, nobody talks about it. But the human race couldn't exist if we didn't have periods. Like,
Hmm.
periods are the reason that we're able to reproduce. And so it seems almost like, yeah, really ironic that it's such a, like, awkward and
Yeah.
taboo and undiscussed topic. It's like,
Yeah, we kind of need it.
yeah, it's kind of important.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. That's just one thing that early on, when I started really diving into this topic, I was just like, this, it doesn't make sense.
Mm-mm.
I don't understand why it's so weird to talk about, when, like, we all know that it's the reason that, like, our species can go on.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's all right here. We'll just have to continue working on it. And
Yeah,
Heidi,
yeah.
thanks so much for being one of those people too. And we like to end every interview of how you live out the fit philosophy. It sounds like you've been working really hard this last year of learning some new things about balance, performance, health, intellect. And yeah, what have you been learning this year and how to take time for self?
Yeah, like I said, I think that is still a work in progress,
Mm-hmm.
100%. And I I've been on, a journey over the past couple years, figuring out what that balance looks like. And from a very young age, I really identified as an athlete and kind of put all my eggs in that basket. And it has taken a long time for me to begin to really, like, unravel that and find balance. And I think that's one of the things where, whether it's, COVID or injuries, they suck, but they have forced me to kind of take pause and slow down and really, like, figure out where my, like, livelihood can come from if I can't be an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do now, I do still like to move every day, but that might mean a swim, it might mean a run, it might mean a walk. I love moving my body. I've been an athlete my whole life, and that's not going to change. But I now can find so much joy in other things as well, and that could be hanging out with, playing with my dog. I try and spend, time every day doing some sort of, like, meditation, or just I have a gratitude journal that I do, and just trying to have some time for stillness. I kind of have a stretching and, like, yoga practice that I do every morning, and so just really having that time of stillness. And yeah, and I think I'm better at work life balance a bit. Being self-employed, that can be hard with COVID. You're working from home, and that balance can be tricky. But I've done a good job of really not working on the weekends and on the evenings, and really drawing those boundaries has been important. And trying to maintain relationships with COVID has also been a challenge, but has been really rewarding. And so that's been a lot of masked, coffee walks with friends. And so, yeah, it's just, I think a big part of it is, yes, still filling kind of that athlete's cup, but making sure I have a lot of other cups as well. One analogy I've used is, it being a giant puzzle instead of, for so many years of my life, I kind of just had a puzzle with one or two pieces. And now, I have a lot of pieces in my puzzle, and making sure that they all kind of get attention has been really important.
Mhm. Well, we continue give you well wishes for that journey that you've been on, and thanks so much for being on and talking about all the things that we love to talk about.
Yeah. Thanks, Heidi.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Have a great week. Bye, Queens. Today's episode is brought to you by yours truly. I'm excited to announce the releasing of my book, Finding Your Sweet Spot in Sport, Avoiding Relative Energy Deficit in Sport, also known as RED-S, by optimizing your energy balance. Be sure to follow me on social media or go to my website, www.beckamacombel.com. Bye, Queens.
For additional information on today's topic and guests, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fit for a Queen. And
Hashtag Fit for a Queen.
don't forget to rate us on iTunes. We can't wait for you to join us next time on Fit for a Queen.
Bye, Queens.